Welcome. It's Monday, 1st of June. The year's getting away from me already. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone got a little bit of sunshine over the weekend. We obviously had some odd goings on over the in Grand Rapids and other areas over the weekend, and I hope we're feeling a little bit more settled than we were. Today I want to talk about winning in multiple offer situations. I know I've covered this topic before, but we are seeing a market where multiple offers are being made. I think I heard one one listing had 21 offers on it. So I want to make sure that you have the best opportunity if you're working with a buyer. You have the best opportunity to win in a multiple offer situation. So we'll talk about some of those things today. Before I do that, though, I want to remind everyone that you have a resource center. The resource center, we got a question last week about employer identification number. What is 5 Star's employer identification number? And also some other information about the HUD home identification. And that is right actually on the home page of the 5starleaders.com, 5starleaders.com resource center. It's right on the very, very first page. All of that information that you need to submit auction order, auction sales, or HUD home store purchases. So there's also a lot of other information on the resource center, and I encourage you to go there because there are the video library is there of all of the live streams that we've done. Paul and Greg, myself, Eric, everything, it's all there. You can find it and go back and look at topics that you may have a question about and pull up the video and watch it. There's also a document library there and frequently asked questions. And very often you can find the answer to your questions on the 5starleaders.com resource center. I don't know if I need to repeat that again, 5starleaders.com, but I will, 5starleaders.com. So that's the resource center.
I'll post it in the comments.
And Dom said he's going to post it in the comments. So moving on. Another resource, of course, is 5 Star Connect. I know a lot of people post on 5 Star Connect, and sometimes other agents will be able to provide them the information. I try to log on there as often as I can, and I know Kim and others do as well. So 5 Star Connect is a great resource. And of course, you have Eric, myself, Kim, all who are here to help you. Paul, Greg, all of us are here to answer questions for you. The Deal Doctor line is 616-490-0902. Again, 616-490-0902. Just to let you know how that works, the call comes in and it is split off to Eric's phone and to my phone, both. And whoever can answer the phone soonest will do that, or be able to call you back as soon as possible. So those are a number of resources for you, and we're happy to help you. There are also clauses that we've prepared for you, particularly escalation clauses and appraisal guarantee clauses, which are in dot loop in the clauses section. But before I leave for the moment, how are we doing? Did I get this in there?
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good? Okay, that is what the 5starleaders.com homepage looks like. That's your resource center. Bookmark it. Keep it handy.
Quick note, they will need to log in as well.
Actually, I think that the password is going to be removed.
It will be, but as of right
Oh,
now.
as of
it's
right
still
now,
there.
yeah, thank you, Don. As of right now, you have to log in with your username and password, but we are going to eliminate the password soon. So, but keep it handy nevertheless. A number of agents called over the past week about dual agency, and clearly there remains some confusion about dual agency. Let me try to explain it this way. In order to enter into dual agency, which, by the way, we would prefer you remain the seller's agent or the buyer's agent and not engage in dual agency, because dual agency suggests you're actually representing two people who are in conflict with one another. And that's nearly impossible. In fact, it is such a tightrope to walk that you can't give information to either party under dual agency that might give an advantage to one party over the other. So if somebody says to me, Don, my listing, the homeowner says, Don, is this a good offer? I can't go, yeah, this is a great offer. I can't do that because I may be giving advice which is giving an advantage to the buyer when I know very well that the buyer would go $5,000 more. I can't say, well, actually, I know that the buyer would go $5,000 more. I can't do that under dual agency. Likewise, if the buyer says to me, what do you think the seller will accept? And I know very well what the seller's bottom line is. And they've told me. And I can't say to that buyer, well, I think you got a good chance if you wrote it for $250. I can't do that because that's conflict of interest. The two tenants, which are constantly in conflict with one another under dual agency, is confidentiality and disclosure. You owe those to both parties under normal agency, whether it's buyer agency or seller agency. When you get into dual agency, those are the two tenets of agency that immediately disappear because you can't keep you must keep the confidentiality, but you can't disclose to either party what you know about the other party. So be very careful about going into dual agency. If you find yourself in a position that you have to go into dual agency, there are two contracts required before you can do that. One is you have to have a listing and you have to have a buyer agency contract, not just an implied agency. Implied agency, you should be working for the seller. So you shouldn't be implying that you're working for the buyer at all. But if you have legitimately a contract with a seller and a contract with a buyer, that buyer wants to buy that seller's home, you may find yourself going into dual agency. But you can't go into dual agency without having two contracts in place, a seller's contract and a buyer's contract. Then you can ask their permission to go into dual agency. You can't go into dual agency simply because you have both sides of the transaction. It's neither required nor allowed that you get to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to go into dual agency. It's the client's decision, and they have to sign a dual agency agreement that you have disclosed to them what dual agency is and what your limitations are as it regards dual agency and their fiduciary well-being. So be very careful. You can't make a decision for a seller or a buyer about whether they're going to be you're going to be operating under dual agency. It's their choice. So enough on that. As I said, we're running into a lot of multiple offer situations, and I want to try to give you the very best information I can. And we've created some things in dotloop for you, some language which can be helpful. I don't know how many of you are aware that there is a section called clauses, but just for a moment, I'm going to try to do this on the other computer here and show you where you find the clauses. Hold on, almost there. Again, I'm going to turn this around. And this is the page that you find all of the forms for your various...
Tip it down a little bit.
Down a little bit?
No more.
A little more? How are we doing? Good? More?
That's pretty good.
Okay. So here's all the forms, various forms for West Michigan and GCAR and so on. And down in this lower area, you'll find clauses, a little blue link called clauses. When you click on clauses in dotloop, it will pull up a number of options that we have written for you. We've had our attorneys review them and clarify them so that we know that they're good clauses to use. So, one of the most powerful things you can do is, when you're in multiple offer situations, is provide a what I call an appraisal guarantee. That is that a buyer has the money available to go above the appraisal price if the property doesn't appraise for the purchase price. For example, I have a listing at $280,000. Buyer comes in, writes an offer, and says, I'm going to offer $270,000. I'm going to offer $280,000, but if the appraisal comes in as much as $10,000 low, I'm still going to buy the property because I'm going to put the additional cash forward to buy the property at the $280,000 over and above the $270,000 appraisal. That's a pretty powerful clause, and we've actually written it for you in one of the clauses within the section in dotloop. For example, let me just find it. It says, if property appraises less than the purchase price, the buyer states they have the available funds and will pay up to a maximum of some amount over the appraised value up to the agreed upon sales price. Now, the question came up today whether there actually should also be more information to protect the seller. And I would say the answer is yes. The seller should have the ability to say, I'm not going to sell my property for less than the price you offered. In this case, let's say $280,000. The appraisal guarantee is great if the property, if they say, well, we're going to make up the difference between $10,000 if the appraisal comes in at $270, or $5,000 if the appraisal comes in at $275. That's all great. It basically makes up the difference to the $280,000 sales price. But what happens if it gets appraised at $250,000? The case could be made that the seller would have to sell up to a maximum of $260,000, $20,000 less than the purchase price. So I would encourage that the language that you should include is, in addition to this appraisal guarantee language, is seller reserves the right to terminate this contract if the appraisal comes in below the purchase price. So just as a protection for your seller. So appraisal guarantees are really powerful things to put in offers during multiple offer situations. Free possession. We used to have free 30 days free possession in much of West Michigan. because of the nature of the tax history. I won't go into that part. But we've come around to the point where buyers have said, well, why should I be paying for someone else to live in my home for 30 days? It's a good point. And so we started seeing buyers asking for rental from the sellers after closing during that period of possession that the seller remained in the home. Now we're seeing a shift in the seller's market where buyers who want to win say, okay, it's worth $800 or $1,000 or even more, $1,500 or $2,000 for me to give you that free possession for 30 days if it means winning the offer. So free possession is another strong point in writing an offer. Shorten the inspection period. Go from 10 days to 8 days, 7 days, or 5 days. Get the possession or get the inspection contingency satisfied as quickly as possible. And that's going to strengthen your offer in the eyes of a listing agent as well as a seller. Strong down payment. I've seen so many times that agents will come in with a minimum down conventional mortgage or FHA mortgage when in fact the buyer has the cash to come in with 20 or 30% down. I can't imagine why in a multiple offer situation anyone would write a low down payment offer. And when you start talking about EMDs, earnest money deposits, in a seller's market, I'd be writing at least 1% of the sales price in the earnest money deposit, probably 2 to 3% if I wanted them to take me seriously, my offer seriously. I think the biggest earnest money deposit I've done was $50,000. So, and that was on about a $500,000 property. So don't be shy. You know, we all want to protect our buyers and watch out for them, their well-being. But their well-being is also in winning the property, winning the day. So if you writing a big earnest money deposit will get the seller's attention, by all means, do so. 2 or 3% of the sales price is not unreasonable. Avoid deal killer small stuff. I call it when it gets hinky. When an offer gets complex and there's a lot of little stuff that the seller gets confused or the seller feels as if they're being nickeled and dimed, that's going to hurt your offer. Keep it clean, keep it simple, keep it straightforward. Don't get down in the weeds with confusing clauses because that's going to make your offer weak in comparison to others. Be specific about COVID delays. There are a lot of clauses going on right now and in forms, and people are making them up as they go along. We have some in the clauses section. And I mentioned this before, I tend to avoid using the COVID forms that were provided by some of the associations as well as the Michigan Realtors, because I feel as though they're too broad. They are too, they favor the buyer. And in that respect, I think having specific language as to how long a buyer has to be delayed or a seller has to be delayed because of a buyer attempting to get a mortgage during this COVID event, I think is unfair to the seller. I saw one today, excuse me, I saw one today where it was open-ended. It just said, if there are any delays in the mortgage process or the getting permits due to the stay-at-home orders, executive order, and so on, that this contract will remain in force as long as necessary. Wow, that really puts the seller in a no man's land. I mean, they don't have any real clue how long something could be delayed. And I think it's fair to have some sort of a deadline in that kind of a clause that says all of those things, that the contract is going to remain in force due to delays, but no later than, but this contract will cause no later than, let's say, July 15th or July 30th. If it doesn't close by July 30th, the seller reserves the right to terminate the offer. I think there have to be deadlines. I think there have to be consequences to offers which protect both parties. And certainly, if you're in a situation where you're trying to get an offer accepted by for your buyer, by all means, be very, very clear about the deadlines and what the consequences are. Escalation clauses. I know that a lot of people are using escalation clauses, and we've written a very comprehensive escalation clause for you, which is in .loop, and it specifically says this: buyer offers purchase price of some amount, but hereby agrees to escalate the offer to some amount more than any and all competing offers, including any competing offers with escalation clauses, minus seller's concessions, from bona fide offers with pre-qualified buyers up to a maximum sales price of their ceiling offer. If escalation clause is implemented, the seller shall provide a copy of the competing offers and the pre-qualification letters pertaining to those offers. So, the last phrase is important, because without it, the seller's Uncle Charlie could write an offer. He's not qualified, doesn't have any money, doesn't have a pre-qualification letter, but he gives the seller an offer, and all of a sudden now your buyer has to meet that offer and escalate above that according to the clause that you've put in. So I think it's really important that you have some triggering device, that you actually see some proof of what triggered the escalation clause. Now, on the flip side, a seller doesn't have to respond to your escalation clause at all. They can simply counter you. If you say, for example, that you're offering $270,000 with an escalation clause of $3,000 over the next best offer, up to a maximum of $280,000, the seller has the right to say to you, I'm ignoring your escalation clause altogether. I'm simply countering you directly for $280,000. It's within their right. It's also within their right to not choose the escalation offer, the escalation clause offer, even though it results in the highest dollar amount to the seller. A listing agent has the duty to look at all of the offers and say, what are the consequences? What's the financing? How long is it going to take to close? What are they asking for in terms of possession or items for sale? You know, is there personal property included in one but not in the other? There's no requirement that a seller has to use your escalation clause, which brings me to the point that if you have a buyer who is really serious about a property, really, really wants it, and you know you're going in against other agents, why would you use an escalation clause? Why wouldn't you write the strongest possible offer for your buyer? And the answer, of course, is, well, I don't want my buyer to pay more than they absolutely have to. They want to buy it at the minimum. But that may ultimately not be their objective. Their objective is to buy that house that they really love. And if you sit down and explain that to them, that we can use an escalation clause, but if you really want the house, come big. Go with everything you've got to get the house. Don't lose it over a couple of $1,000. It's not worth it. How are you going to feel? Well, I ask my buyers, how are you going to feel if tomorrow you wake up and find out that you lost the $400,000 house that you really, really wanted for $2,000? Are you going to be okay? And a lot of them will say, no, not for $2,000. Get me the house. I want the house. Okay, then let's do that. Here's the number one thing, most powerful thing you could do, in my opinion, is to include the credit scores in the pre-qualification letter. Now, a lot of lenders will tell you they can't do that. They will cite privacy laws, they will squirm, they will feel uncomfortable, and to that I say, I'm going to use a lender that will give me the credit scores, providing they're good, of course. If I've got an 800 credit score for each of the buyers, and my offer goes in with that pre-qualification letter that says their credit scores are 800 or above, whose offer is going to win? The buyer or the seller is going to look at that and go, that offer is going to close. With those credit scores and those numbers and that EMD, I believe that has the highest chance of getting to the closing table. I'm going to go with that one, even though another one might be a few dollars more. So if you want to do that, if you talk with your lender and the lender balks and says, well, we can't do that, that's against our policy because of price or because of privacy issues, then I would say to the lender, you can get a letter from the buyer releasing you to do that, giving you the waiver to provide that information in the pre-qualification letter. And if you don't want to do that, then I'm going to go and find a lender who will, because that is going to be my ace in the hole against all of the other agents out there who are writing offers in competition with me. It's a very, very powerful thing to do. And if lenders don't want to do it, I'm going to find one who will. So what do we got for questions? Any questions today? No questions. All right. Well, I've yammered on for almost half an hour, so I hope you got something out of it today. Go get them. The market's there. The buyers are out there. Let's take advantage of it. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.